Boaster is the worst skilled player on our team. I guess that ties into the second point. Like, second point is coaching staff matters.
You have to get Fnatic to think about the fact that this game is more like a MOBA than it is a traditional FPS.
Is that a leak, by the way?
No. It's, don't worry. All the teams out there are being released.
SOK is this random dude who's coaching like tier 2 like Valorant in Europe. Nobody knows who he is, and he's like one of the smartest people I've ever talked to in Valorant.
Roughly a beautiful hour that we're going to have to talk to a man who definitely understands Valorant and who definitely knows what he's been doing throughout the last 2 years, most definitely. He's my favorite watch party streamer in this universe. It is nobody else than Mini. He himself, coach of Fnatic, and some of you might have heard of him, as we are about to talk about basically everything Valorant related. And this just starts with the question, how are you enjoying the off-season, Mini?
It's been pretty good. I mean, like, it's not been too much of an off season for me as the players maybe, but it's been alright. It's been a lot of work being going on. So, like, I actually for the first time yesterday actually like did some theory for Valorant yesterday, and that's been like the first time I've been able to just like have some fun and like look at Valorant again. But apart from that, it's been a lot of work basically. Yeah, so I'm kind of looking forward to having some time off, but I'm also mindful that like it's not actually that much time before we get back to work. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to like waste the off season, but I do need to recharge. So it's just that balance, you know?
Yeah, I'm going to start with basically a question that is not even to your team related, but that would just be really intriguing to me about the entirety. It doesn't have to be EMEA related. If just on the top of your head, what has been the craziest kind of decision/roster change that you have seen during the off season so far?
Oh crap! I mean, I'm already in the mode that like everything's normal now. Like, I've forgotten that like this is all fresh and new. Like, obviously I'm a coach, so behind the scenes I know what's going on a little bit.
Mhm.
Like, I can't even think like what's big or not big. I guess to me, the big question mark, I think Sliggy said it today on stream, would be tens on Sentinels, about whether that move, like continuing with tens, whether that's a good move or not. I think that might be a question mark move to me. Other than that, I think there's just a ton. There's like so many like almost every team has rebuilt without a core, it feels like. So I think like almost every team has like massive question marks.
I do have a quick.
Yeah,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
Hawk. I'm sorry. So earlier, I don't know if you caught our conversations, but I mentioned something about M3C, and I won't get too like intricate into that conversation again. But what I do want to ask you is this: why did your roster not feel compelled to make sweeping changes, given Nats was available, right? All the possible new talent that can come in. Because to me, and I'll quickly explain this so you have an idea as to where I'm coming from. I felt like M3C breaking up was tragic for them because I felt like the moves they were making internally, like, swapping Shados to, Sova and stuff, those were the real issues, not them as a group. And I feel like in Valorant, especially from like a GM perspective, too many teams hit the panic button instead of really looking at like some of the actual problems that exist on teams. I was shocked that you guys didn't make any changes, given the fact that you guys, in my opinion, were favorites to win champions and did not. I will also tell you, disclaimer, I'm very happy that you guys did not and only made one change as opposed to like everybody else. Well, hey, true, chronic, and so, yeah, okay, fine, but it isn't as drastic as I thought it would be. Well, I will admit that I thought it was interesting that you picked up Chronicles at all. I will also admit that given the fact that, okay, let's be honest here. Would you agree that Boaster is probably not the best player on your team?
No, Boaster is the worst skilled player on our team.
Right. Most teams, and I'd argue, look at what Optic did with Jimmy, with Marv, right? Would you not agree that Marv was the exact opposite? He was one of the better, if not the second best player on that team.
Yeah.
Right. Why is it that some teams make those changes and others, like yours, think about other things much differently? I agree that obviously you shouldn't have changed Bolster, but that is an example of a change that I think most people would have made given what happened at Champions.
You think
So
most
what?
teams would change Boaster?
Well, look at the example I gave you. Optic changed Mark.
Obviously, you don't change an IGL that's had a successful track record.
I mean, okay, sure, you can say that. However, a lot of IGLs, well, so on teams, right? The IGL position has switched so many times on so many top teams that most people don't even realize it, right? So, would you like me to go through like the order in NA? Because
in
I
Europe,
can
in
tell
Europe
you,
that doesn't happen. We've got like 4 tier 1 IGLs, I think, in Europe. So like we've got like Redgar, we've got Coldamenta, we've got Boaster, we've got Angel. And then after that, there's like not a distinct international tier IGL.
So then what you're saying is it's a cultural thing. Like the reason why Fnatic didn't make sweeping changes across the board is mainly more cultural, whereas in NA they eviscerated every roster basically.
I think in NA is because there's no proven track record teams apart from Optic, and then apart from Optic, like an Optic was like, let's be real, the money in NA floats a lot higher than EU. So like the moment that Optic are all free agents, like these weird moves have to be made. Like no one could afford that entire Optic team. Like really.
You'd be surprised.
Well,
Yeah,
then
you'd be surprised.
okay, well maybe, but like
Right,
I think
right.
that
No. But your
it
point
would
is
be
valid. Your
obvious
point is
that
absolutely
it'd be
valid.
obvious to pick up the whole Optic team. That like the
Right.
reason it didn't happen would have been, I would presume, because of financial situation.
That's ultimately what it came down to. But that roster, as constituted, like January of this year, actually, they wanted to remove Ye. As crazy as that is, right? So,
Okay.
right, the rest of the year happened, and then obviously now it became a thing where like, oh wow, he might be the best player in the world. But like that changed.
Well, you mean January this year?
Yeah. January this year, like the first VCT, like this first
Oh,
season.
okay, but that's fair enough.
Yeah.
He became the best player in the world after that
Post,
point. I'd say,
right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. I think it's a weird. I think our team has made pretty drastic. I think one of the things is our team has made fairly drastic changes throughout the past 2 years. Like we have been making lots of aggressive roster moves. I think it's very weird for our team who's been successful. Like we might have kind of not hit the heights we should have done, but like to make a giant cut in our team would be a very weird decision. I think cutting past 2 players is probably like Derek never goes.
Yeah.
Boaster is hard to replace. Alpha Year, that's
Right. So
brutal to do to Alpha Year. You know what I mean? Like that's...
Right. I mean, from my perspective, I thought Enzo was going to go anyway. So Mystic, I was slightly surprised by, but I obviously felt the upgrade in Chronicle kind of justified the position, right? So, like, if we're going to be honest. But so to round this all out, it's basically cultural. EU just has a very fundamental, specific way of thinking about
no,
roster moves.
I don't think so at all. I think that EU had 10 slots, NA had 5. So you're gonna make more aggressive moves in a region where you've got it's a different context, it's a different marketplace. There's a smaller amount of teams that the best players can join. Like it feels like there's a much different thing going on.
Yeah,
I think if Optic made it to partnership, that team probably would have been more together. Like they still kept 4 of the core if you include the coach. You know what I mean? Like that's still a big core. So I just think that not many NA teams have proven track record to be that successful apart from Optic. I think in Europe you've probably got like us and FPX are probably the ones that you would look at most so. I mean, of course, Exa are really good, but like it's not like they've done it for 2 years. They kind of been just below the kind of international level. So I don't know. Like I think it just us and FPX essentially made it to partnership with FPX getting to Navi. So yeah, I don't see a drastic difference in philosophy there. Maybe there is. I don't know. I mean, I'm not really too tied into the NA scene.
Yeah, but that's a very astute point you made with the 10 slots and the 5. I hadn't even considered that. I asked you the question. That's actually a really good point.
I did want to ask you about something. You made a comment about the tens move with Sentinels and them
Mhm.
sticking with tens. I've not said it publicly because of fear of arguing the tens army, but I do believe that tens as a player is very hyped, maybe more so than he should be. Why is it that you think it's a surprise that Sentinel's stuck with him? Is it because of that reason, or do you think that there's something else going on that maybe is not as noticeable to us?
I mean, I wouldn't want to come out and say it's a surprise. Like, it's not. I don't know. It's like a 50-50 to me. Like, I don't know tens. Like, I don't know anything about him as a person. I don't know his in game. I don't even know his game that well. I don't sit there watching tens worlds. You know what I mean? Like, he's not up there that I sit
Right.
down. Like, but I've watched enough of Sentinels to know that like it looks like he has been uncomfortable in the past. He's been late to agents and metas, and I don't know if that's his fault or the structure around him or both. Like, I don't know. But there's kind of a when there's smoke, there's fire. That kind of vibe. Like, maybe there's something going on. So I just feel like with 5 slots, essentially, you got a region with a lot of strong duelists who have been more flexible than him. Like, he's an asterisk in that team, in my opinion. I think that like it's high risk, high reward. I think like if it works, it's gonna make Sentinels a shit ton of money, and it will make them very successful. If it doesn't work, then you know, I mean, they've always got next year kind of vibe. I think.
Who would you say would have been a better pickup potentially for them instead of tens? Obviously, like you deal mostly with EMEA, so you might not know perfectly, but in your mind, who would be a perfect pickup?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I
Okay.
really don't look like I had one import option that I was looking at like on my like back of my head, and I'm not even gonna say it because I don't want that person to kind of know because I feel like it'd
Right,
be
right,
bad.
right.
But there was only like
Right, of
one
course.
person that was like on my list for like, oh maybe. So and that wasn't even for a duelist role. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure. But any of the duelists that made partnership, I think are worth kind of thinking about. I guess. I feel like Frost probably knows a lot more about this kind of thing than I would. I don't really follow as hard.
I'll be
I mean,
honest with you though. I totally understand, and I to some respect agree with you, especially if you haven't really played against them or like been around. I can totally understand where everyone's perspective is on this. But as somebody that played against them, the only reason Sentinels were even competitive with us is because tens would just change the math and win rounds he should never win, right?
of course. I mean, he shit on
And
us in Iceland last year. Like, he literally got 40 kills. But you know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, I felt the tens effect before. It's just
yeah,
about whether you know whether in a team that's more structured in a partnership mode where everyone's going to be at that peak. Like, is this tens' moment to step up to that? Like,
right.
I guess.
I
And
will say
I don't
that,
know. Like, I feel like we're spending a lot of time talking about tens as well. Like,
yeah,
I really did.
your reservation is, I think, the lack of adequate coaching and sort of the lack of systemic practices that existed on Sentinels that I think now he's having to answer for. I don't necessarily think it's him, and that's probably the best way I'll put it, right? Sometimes it's the system or the situation you're in that often leads to, you know, weird dynamics. Do I think he's one of the best 25 players in North America? Yes. Do I think he has a lot to prove going into the season, though? Yes.
By whether he's one of the top 25 players, it's about whether he's the top 5 duelist in America,
Right.
which is a different
Well,
question in my opinion.
the way thing, yeah, for sure, 100%, no question. And the
Okay,
reason
so
for this is specifically just like think about who the cohorts are. Like we are gonna say Victor is probably at the top, right?
Mhm.
Okay, but is that a byproduct of the system or Victor?
It's like I think
Yeah.
Victor is like a
Well,
flex player more than a duelist, so
right.
I don't know.
Okay, well, I'm actually really glad you said that because I agree with you. But the point I was going to make was every time I hear about this, he's always the first duelist that comes up. But it's basically because of results. But in reality, his position and his results are tied to the team, FNS, the team dynamics, all that stuff, right? As an entry, the game's a lot different when you have Ye on your team. Just like you, for like, say, Alpha when he's on Raze, having Dirk on your team matters. Like,
Of course, of
it
course.
opens up a lot because you have that guy with you alongside. You can't like stack one side and just say, oh, we're just going to play retake there. You give that other guy more space. He might kill the other two or the one that you have watching the other side like that. And now all of a sudden you can't even retake. Now you have to save. So like those guys change the math. I would just say that I think TenZ is better than most people think on tape if you study him. It's unfortunate that he has all these question marks because of all this other stuff that we're talking about, which is sad. And I do agree we spent way too much time on TenZ. Because Zekken, to me, Zekken is the real guy on Sentinels.
Make sure to subscribe to Valoranting because they ask some pretty good questions, so you don't want to miss out on the answers.
Listen. We had already a half a block full of NA. I have to swap this to a fully Fnatic thing. I know we can discuss about that forever, but what I really want to know about, because the year has ended, right? You had really good performances over the course of the year, and you know nothing going ideal, but I personally would say it was a solid 2022. What in my eyes, particularly doing the one or the other change there for me, what I would like to know from you, Mini, if you would be like, okay, what are the top 3 learnings for us as Fnatic in 2022 that you can openly talk about? What would you put up there? What would you put as your most important learning, and what would you put as your entire top 3, to put it that way?
I think 2 things come to mind straight away, and I have to think about the third. I think the first thing is to set the tone a little bit. Like 2021, we were this really like rigid team, especially like 2021 champions. Like we played very rigid. And I think that like we kind of worked with Anders back then, and I think that working with Anders did a lot for us, and it did some things that I think that we now do better. So going into 2022, like we didn't work with an assistant coach very much. Me and Bosa are kind of like refining the relationship between just us working together strategically. And I think that there were some good things that came out of that and some bad things. And I think that like it set us up to know what we need for a partnership. So basically 2021, I'd say we were a bit strict. 2022, a bit loose. Trying to give players a little bit more individual kind of playmaking space. I think that works really well online specifically. But at LAN, I feel like we needed a bit more structure behind certain ideas. I think there were some nerves, some game plans that didn't go the way that they should have done. So yeah, I think about next year's about balancing those 2 together, like allowing Durka just go Durka mode, or Alfia to go Alfia mode, or any of the 4 players, and then Bosa now and again. You know what I mean? Like any of them can do that. So, but then when there's a bit of nerves, when things are going a bit not our way, like what's the fallback plan? Because I feel like at times our fallback plan this year wasn't as structured as what it could have been. So yeah, so I think there's some work from my side, some work from Bosa's side, and hopefully going into 2023, like I was working with SLK, assistant coach for champs.
Right.
He did a lot of good work for us, and I'm hoping that in 2023 we can start working with him too, because he did a lot of work on some of the maps that we're really strong at right now, and I think that like his input's been really good. So yeah, I think I guess that ties into the second point. Like second point is coaching staff matters. Like we saw that with like Marcus as our performance coach, but like specifically in-game stuff, like we just need a little bit more help. Like we just need a little bit more brain power, because there's too much stuff to do. Third thing, I'm not sure. I'll think of something.
Okay, you can say it later. You can just mention it later.
Late round scenarios need to improve a lot. I feel
Our
like
late
the biggest reason. Like if you think back to DRX on Ascent, you only lose that map because late round scenarios, the amount of retakes you guys lost with advantage is, the amount of retakes they won with a disadvantage to me was whoa.
That game, like I haven't watched it back yet, but like one of the things I'm gonna do in the off season is like I've started watching back a few of the games. Just like watching back those kind of games where it's just like I know there's about 1 million mistakes that like they can't, like there's the same mistakes we've made in the past and they just can't continue if we want to actually win a championship. Like it's frustrating. Like it's really frustrating. The kind of shit that I don't even let it slide in prac when we're in prac, but like something has to kind of change. You know what I mean? Like So yeah.
Wait,
so
here's
that's
a good thing though. Here's a good thing, right? From like coach to coach or whatever. In order to get to those minute late round situations against teams like DRX, you have to be doing something right. Because for the first minute or so, you have to be winning to get those leads, right? So a lot of players, a lot of teams, I felt like not to bring back the M3C stuff, but I felt like that hurt them a lot. They were losing the late rounds, and then they lost confidence in each other. Whereas you at least have the proper
Yeah.
perspective. Yes, I keep saying last year because the season's over.
Yeah,
We're in the new one. Sorry, Zescht already corrected me on it, but I still can't change the way like my brain works. So what I'll say is, in order to fix those minute like late game stuff, that really is time, because you guys were integrating, Alpha. I mean, he had been on your team for a while, but those late round situations, they come up so rarely. How do you always fix them? You can't. Sometimes you have to just like fail at it a couple times, and then over time you find a better like sequence or pattern, right? Like, or positions that help.
Yeah,
So
I think
you
that's
have the right
something that
perspective
with
on that. That's good.
Anders did help us with that stuff back in 2021. Like, we had some very set structured things, and I do think set structured things are just general kind of like, these are, if we're in a 3v3, only 3 of us are alive, these are kind of the gold spots, or 2 of us
Right.
alive, these are the kind of gold spots, and you know what I
Right.
mean, like those kind of things I think are really helpful. And I think that is something that maybe, because we've been quite aggressive with changing our roster the past 2 years, that's probably one of the points that like was hard to kind of integrate at times, was like, there's always this knowledge within certain members of the team that doesn't always get past to everyone. Like, me and Boaster obviously have the most shared knowledge about how we want to play, and we're always trying to like share that. But there's like situations on Ascent where like I know Boaster knows like what we would prefer in like a 3v3, and like maybe that doesn't always come across because we just haven't had the reps that another team with a an Optic would, with their roster being together for that long a period, So hopefully that continues to share. I mean, with an assistant coach too, hopefully there's more people to like do that work individually.
Right. But like, that's the third thing I would say needs to be cleaned up, because you guys lost too many clutches against it. In my opinion, you should have won that series.
Like we threw that series 100%.
Right.
Like,
and it was the late round stuff, and I feel like you clean that up, I'm not really sure how people are going to beat you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird one because I wouldn't, as a coach, I don't always like to blame that stuff, because some of that stuff is,
that's the game. It happens.
That's some of the stuff where like I feel like I can have an impact, but it's
Right.
like easy to be like, oh, we just lost clutches, you know what I mean? So like I feel like there are also things that we need to improve that like is my responsibility too. Like, our pro was a bit of a mess. Like, I have to take my hands up and be like, macro wise, we should have done better on pro. So I think there's a few things that we need to improve for next year. Nothing like worrying, to be honest. Like, I think clutch situations like that, like I think some of that was nerves. I think that like, especially in front of a crowd, like I think the nerves set in a little bit in some of those situations. Like, we didn't win a single like 1v1, and then we just threw like 3v1s and stuff when there was like no need to, you know what I mean? So I think some of that's just experience, to be honest, too.
Well, yeah, the 1v1s certainly you can't, but the 3v1s, that's practice. That's what practice is.
Yeah.
We don't need to get into that. We can talk about this offline, but basically that's just practice. You got to be very strict about how they play these things in practice, so that when they're nervous, it's just instinct that kicks in.
Yeah, of course.
Interpretation of the game. Sorry, Bach. On me.
No, you're good. Looking at the last 2 years, Valorant has been tricky. The pro circuit changing from year 1 to year 2 for VCT obviously improved the circumstances, especially for you guys, given that you were invited and you no longer had to play through those somewhat complicated qualification processes that existed in 2021, especially in Europe. But the fact that there wasn't even parity across regions made things really weird. We had different formats in NA than you guys had in EU. Now that we're moving into this new format in 2023, especially playing on LAN, do you feel like you guys are in a better position and condition to be one of the top teams in Europe? Because not only are you used to playing on LAN because you've already done it a couple of times, but now you have the actual opportunity to take each individual match and have a little bit more time to prepare for it?
I think that's an interesting question that I probably need to think a little bit more about, in terms of like the way Valorant will be played now will be slightly differently when you've got, like, I think last year we did have a lot of like 1 weeks to prepare, so I think it was similar to what it will be in the future. But I'm still not sure whether like we get the advantage from 1 week preparation or not. Like, I know some people think we're good at prep, and I think we generally are quite good at prep, but I'm not sure. I think that having LAN experience definitely helps. A lot of the teams in Europe now haven't been to an international event, like more than like half their team wouldn't have been, whereas our team now has 5 players that have all been to an international event, so I think that is definitely helpful. But yeah, I think that's an interesting point that might be underrated. The idea that like the games are now never going to be like stacked up like they were in open qualification, where you're just playing like a bunch of best of ones and then some best of threes, and you've got no time. Like, I think that would be something that we saw a little bit of last year, and I think going in forward, like the coaching staff stuff's just gonna, you know, teams in NA. It sounds like they're really building out coaching staff potentially with like analysts and coaches all over the place. So like they might have an upper hand to actually deal with that kind of preparation.
No, that's for show. Trust me, that's
really
for show. You good in again offline. Trust me, that's
okay.
yeah.
I'd say some of the team's coaches have a little bit more impact than others, and I think some of them, yeah, I agree.
Some of
they're
them are just
they're
friends.
decorative, very
You know the
decorative.
deal, right?
Okay.
Esports is all about who
I
you
mean,
know.
Yeah.
I mean, publicly we should. Okay, I want you to
No,
say
no,
the.
no, no, no.
I want you to
Offline,
say. I want
offline.
you to say the opposite, so that I can get 5 coaches from my team, because I'll use them better.
Oh,
I mean-
yeah, true.
Yeah.
I'll say this, kind of piggybacking off that question. Then, how confident are you guys coming into the year that you're going to be one of the top teams in EMEA? Because obviously, like we talked about the roster moves right before we had you on. We talked about the teams that you're going to be competing against, teams in your region, and it really is like, in my opinion, and I mean no disrespect, Na'Vi is kind of number one right now. Like the change they made plus what they kept from their previous roster puts them in a really good position to be one of the best teams in EMEA, potentially in the world. You guys are right below them. Do you feel that's fair? Do you feel like you're above them? Do you feel like you match up against them better? And how do you feel like you match against the rest of the region?
I think it's like an impossible answer to give. Like, of course, like if I was an outsider, I might put Na'Vi above us as expectations. I might put us above them. Like it's until we start playing.
You're
like
always
no
going to
one.
be confident. Like you can't say, "Oh, we're
Yeah,
the worst team in our region." Like
of
you
course.
have to
Like
feel like you can
I
beat
think
anybody.
us Na'Vi, I would put as like 1 and 2, and I think Liquid I would put them third, to be honest, just
Third,
because
okay.
of the pure like.
Same.
Yep.
They haven't had the same core as us. Like it's a fresh team. Like I don't know how those. Like they could be number 1, but like odds are like it's hard to say. And then there's probably a bit of a gap underneath that.
Huge.
And I think there's some like teams that like we don't know. Like there's going to be some teams that just randomly click, and there's just going to be some. We're going to be like, oh my god, how did we not know that this team were just going to be fucking sick? You know what I mean? Like that Giants team has got, in my opinion, 3 like. If you're talking about role by role, they've got like 3 players on their team that I think are like potentially top 3 in Europe. Like I think that Cloud, Hoodie, and Nukia are genuinely that level. Is that a leak, by the way?
No.
I don't know.
Don't worry.
Okay.
All the teams out there have been released.
Oh,
all
okay.
public by now. Don't worry.
So I think that like that's a really good. But then like what happens on the kind of overall team structure? Like do they actually gel? Like who fucking knows? Like Cold Menta might end up taking like Koi to like the next level because of his IGLing. Like it's
that
just...
is a leak.
That is a
the
leak?
only one. Yeah, Koi's not officially. I mean, there has been a lot of rumors. I would say
come
that.
on.
I have posted about.
I don't officially
Oh.
know. It's not like someone's actually told me like Mini, by the way. Like
good.
Cold
No.
genuinely...
It's fine. It's basically everyone has pretty much mentioned it before. I think Koi's rumors have been going around multiple times, so it's no big deal. That's the only
Okay.
team, by the way, that has no official. But every other team is officially announced.
Okay.
So go on.
Well, I mean
excuse
that guy was making partnerships, so you can put 1 and 1 together. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, you're
that's
right.
kinda
You're
obvious.
right. Go on.
So yeah, like it's just going to be really difficult to say. Like obviously, like our teams never really failed. Like we might not have hit expectations at times, but there's only been like 1 period in the last maybe like 2 periods where we kind of were underperforming, but like 75-80% of the time we were kind of up there internationally. So I think it'd be difficult for us to truly fail. Whether we're going to win everything is a different question. Like I know there's going to be a lot of pressure and expectations for this team. I know if like we don't hit like podium finishes at events, like people are going to be questioning me and Boaster a little bit. So I mean, I'm up for the challenge, but yeah, it's going to be a difficult year.
Bloodbath. It's going
What's
to be
that?
a bloodbath. It's going
Yeah,
to be a
of course.
bloodbath. Every region.
Yeah.
I think your region less so because I think the top teams are just so much better than the rest. But this season is going to be a bloodbath, man.
Yeah, I
Right.
interesting
I'm
because I
sorry,
heard
Mark.
you talking about APAC a little bit, and like I was thinking
Yeah.
about it for a second. Like APAC, I think I might agree with you that I don't agree that APAC is the strongest, but I think that there's like a sleeper amount of teams that might.
Well, they
do some
were the
damage.
strongest technically because if you really think about it, okay, 2 top teams from last year everyone was saying was DRX and PRX, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So by that logic, if you have 2 of the top 3 teams, you have to be the strongest region. Because you also so eloquently put it earlier, NA was trash, which I will agree,
I didn't
right?
say NA was trash.
I mean, you said it was really only Optic, which listen, I agree
I mean,
with
it's
you.
like
Yeah,
as
no, I
a
agree.
as a core.
This is
that
no
you would
disrespect.
pick
It's
up.
just honesty here. It's okay to be honest. It's so crazy that people have to like qualify everything. It is true. NA was way worse than EU. EU had more teams that were highly competitive.
Well, this
last
year.
Or
Oh, this like you said.
yeah, this I know. Okay, in
His last year is this year.
2022.
In 2022.
2022, right? I think
Okay.
it's fair to say
I think NA and
EU
EU was
very
kind of-
clearly right. I would even argue that South America was weak outside of Loud.
Yeah.
I think it's not a disrespect to any of the
Mhm.
players that are in the league, any of the teams that were also participating in those tournaments, to be honest enough to say that EU and APAC were much better than the other regions. And then I think, based on the logic I presented earlier, that to say DRX and PRX were 2 of the top teams, it's okay to then say APAC is probably the strongest region. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's like way further between APAC and EU. I'm just saying that it's fair to assume that they were the strongest region based on that margin of the top 3 teams in the year could have been DRX and PRX. You could make a strong case for EU as well. I'm not arguing this at all. I'm just trying to like present the facts as
What
stated.
you mean with it? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there's a huge drop off after DRX PRX though. That like, I think if we had a bloodbath tournament like Brazil, like we'll see that like.
I agree with
what I
you
mean?
there that overall the stronger region was probably EU because 1 through 8 is much stronger than 1 through 8 in every other region. I will agree with that. I was only talking about the top heavy, like we were talking about top 3 basically, right? Top 3 teams in the world.
I see.
That's the order it fell in, and then obviously
Yeah, that's
you guys
why I
were
had.
like
That's
4.
why I was being a bit like. You thought I was being politically correct. I wasn't. I was just like genuinely
Okay,
didn't agree. You know
yeah.
what I mean? Like we just misunderstood.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like Brazil's going to be so interesting though. Like
Right.
I think I've always said that. Like I think Europe's had their. Europe at times has felt like the kind of teams that don't make it to international. It's a shame because like
Agreed.
it always felt that like they were still very good. I think in NA, I think that this year actually, in my opinion, there has been an elevation in NA. Like I think coaching staff, there's more of it. I think there's better players. I think there's a general spirit of actually playing the game like quote unquote properly to some degree. So I think there's been improvement there. So I wouldn't say that there's necessarily much of a difference there.
Oh,
Maybe,
you don't say.
you know.
Structured play and actually paying attention to ults and money is really important in NA. Wow, you don't say.
Whereas last year, no, last year NA was even with NA was a shit show
Yeah,
last year, you know?
yeah, we had a culture of
bad.
YOLO every round. Yeah,
Yeah, it was literally like, hey, who's the jet main that's gonna just run at you?
I'm very happy to hear that, Mini. Yeah,
Which is a real shame to me because I think that you had all the right like you could have snowballed. Like NA could have snowballed out of control.
We should have
If,
won a
like-
world championship in 2021. We trolled each other.
Yeah,
What happened outside of the server is the reason why we didn't win the championship, period.
yeah.
There's no other way around it. Even our Optic game, which was the decider match for us to go to LCQ, was just ego and bullshit because we knew how to beat them. We knew what to do. We just weren't on the same page. And for some reason, people were just like, I'm just going to do what the fuck I want because I'm cool. So, like, NA's problem has always been its own ego.
Mhm.
It's good that you're noticing, though, that they're beginning to realize that they actually need to take the shit seriously or they're just going to get, smacked around. So I'm glad you actually say that because I think that a lot of NA people get really offended when, outsiders say this. But in reality, though, you're an outsider with like prestige. You can actually be like, guys, like you're trolling and no one can really, dispute that because like when Angel did it, he did it while not qualifying for tournaments.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like they didn't take it seriously then because, they didn't care. Now they have to take it seriously because if not, you guys are going to eat their lunch.
It's already. I wouldn't say anything if it hadn't changed. Like there's coaches
sure.
now. I like in 2021. I wouldn't steal anything from like many NA teams, and like now,
Right.
I might actually watch some NA VODs and be like, oh, that's interesting. That's something new. I mean, like so. I think there's been a shift there for sure. But I think I guess what I was saying was like, I still think Counter-Strike fundamentals back then like mattered hell of a ton. I still think there's still things from Counter-Strike we can learn still in Valorant. And I think that foundation in NA was like a really good basis to just snowball off. But instead,
True.
they just got beat by like Fortnite players and stuff. So like, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
you know, so yeah. But I mean, yeah, 2023 is going to be way different. I think it's going to be, as you said, like a bloodbath. Like everyone's just so good. Like there's
Yep.
going to be like so little fraud. Like there's just so many good people. So
I feel bad for the tier 2 scene because the consolidation of talent
mhm.
happened so fast that like now you're not going to get like the, Xset won't exist anymore.
I mean, I think you'll see other teams kind of fill that void. I don't know who it's going to be just yet, but I think there's going to be like 3 or 4 really good teams playing in tier 2, and then it's just going to be
sure, but those teams in comparison to the partner
not even
teams,
close.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Whereas before, in my opinion, what NA really had was, a team like Soar, right, with like Vic and especially when they had Cryo and Xander, that team could beat LG or Shopify Rebellion, right? They could beat the complexities. They could beat the other teams that were rounding out the top 8s. I don't think it's going to be the case that even the worst team in the league, in my opinion, in the partnership program, should still handily beat pretty much every team minus maybe 1 or 2 in Ascendant.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like the Knights were for a little bit with their team when they first made it in, or even EG when they made it in. Like, they were like a team that was like kind of on the cusp. Crew was one of those teams in North America that was like, everyone kept waiting. They kept waiting. They just never really made it beyond that level. One of the things you had mentioned, Minnie, was, looking at 2023, and we're talking about all these other regions. One of the first chances we're going to see all of these teams together is like everyone just gets thrown into an international event. You guys, as far as I can tell, pretty much don't have anything for the rest of the off season because Europe's events are kind of more regionalized for what's left. So, and a lot of what's left for the off season elsewhere is in Brazil, and I'm not sure what's going to happen with those, and I'm not expecting you to give me any information if you guys are going or not. But given that basically your competitive year starts with a massive international event, how are you guys going to prepare for that? Is there plans to like boot camp in the US? Is there plans for, do you know if teams are coming to EU? Like I'm really trying to understand how teams are going to prepare for a 30-team international event with no experience playing against each other and no tier 1 playing experience because there hasn't been anything.
So quickly, just to backtrack, like off-season stuff, we're not playing anything like super big. Like we've got some show matchy stuff in Italy, which is just some content really. And then we're going to Japan, which is going to be quite nice over Christmas.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I think that might actually be a few semi-serious games against like the Japanese team maybe, but I don't know if it's going to be like
DRX
serious.
as well.
So,
there's DRX as well.
I think DRX are going. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Maybe paper.
Yeah, there's.
I'm not sure. So yeah,
no, I think it's just DRX.
So like I know that like these tournaments in the off season are like kind of important to like some teams, but I think for us we just need to recharge batteries a little bit and just take a break. And then when it comes around to preparing for next year, for Brazil, I think that like already me and Colin have been like our team director been talking about probably going to a boot camp in NA, maybe South America. I think some of it is dictated by like what other teams are doing. So like if a bunch of other teams go to NA, then it would make sense to all kind of make sure that you're in the place where all the good teams are practicing. I mean, if nobody goes to NA, then like that's basically the question is like, do you still go?
If I can help you with that. So teams in NA are supposed to be, so every team is supposed to be in LA at or around January 17th. There's like a like a time where they need you to be there. So I imagine that before they go to the tournament, like the NA teams, not the obviously EU ones, the NA teams will be there. So if you wanted to get practice against NA teams, that period would probably be the best. But I imagine you guys have the same rules for Berlin.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What do you mean same rules?
Like having to be there.
You guys have to have your infrastructure or in place in Berlin.
Oh no. Like I don't know how much I can leak or whatever, but we are going to be in Berlin for 3 months next. Like me and like half our team are going to be moved to Berlin. The other half of the team are going to like stay at home because we don't need to go to Berlin. We only need to be in Berlin for 3 months next year, and we don't need to go early next year. So I'm not sure why they need to be in LA that early if they're not playing from LA that early. I don't really understand.
Well, that's from my understanding, that is what certain Brazilian teams are complaining about, which is like, you're gonna have us come here to go back there for 3 weeks. But for all intents and purposes, I was trying to just like give you the info that like, yeah, most of the NA will be in LA.
If it's like
period.
us, they need to move like slightly later, like after the Brazil tournament is basically what we need to look at. So yeah,
Right.
yeah, we'll be just boot camping, essentially. And I think prep will just be like any other tournament. It'll just be me, Poster, and hopefully SRK just grinding away, focusing on macro, prepping all day, practicing as much as we can. Yeah.
I would like to hear your opinion on something, because there's this kind of this theory that doesn't have to be right, it doesn't have to be wrong. I just want to hear people's opinion about it. In my eyes, it feels a lot like, consider we have top four set in EMEA, right? So let's imagine that for a second. In my eyes, and I think we chat about this, and we can now have a bit more as a vocal discussion. Is I believe that if we consider as a deciding factor that is not in the moment, in the millisecond where the headshot is needed, I believe that this 2023 season will be decided by the best coaching staff. If you understand what I mean. Do you think that is the case, and that coaching staff, particularly with the upcoming year where it gets a bit more serious, let's put it that way, has even more impact?
I don't think it's any less, or maybe it's more. It's really difficult to say. I don't know if the conditions make it now more impactful. I'm not sure. Definitely, if you're not a world-class coach, you're probably not going to win tournament anymore.
Let me put it differently, because you have been playing a lot of CS, and I think everyone in this room has been tons of CS experience. For me, it was like that when I take a look at CS back in the day. The difference that we have between early on CS, which also had 1.6 in Source, but nobody knows Source, and also logically Valorant, is that Valorant has, besides that we have a map and we have positions and everyone has the same utility, everything is five-fold to a certain extent. 5 different players, 5 different pieces of utilities, plus ult, right? So therefore, in my head, this theory existed of like, okay, as a coach, you can only do this and that as a daily work, right? But it feels to me like with the right kind of assistance, the same way that I think league teams have like 5 coaches for every lane or some, that this could make the difference in, okay, I can have an overall good team on a macro level, but then there's this one guy who takes care of even a more micro level than I have, this guy who takes a bit more of an anti-striding. Of course, in the server itself, it has to work, right? If your players are shit that day, they're shit that day. But it feels like that leveling to that extent could be decided much more by coaching staff, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. So basically, the last thing I've been working on, like in the off season, was the coaching staff structure. Like I think something to preface this conversation by a little bit is that like I've only been a professional coach for less than 2 years. Like before that, I was a normal office worker. Like I didn't do this. So I think the way I approach everything is like with like an open mind, I guess, and just like reevaluate from the ground up, like why certain things are the way they are. Like why does League of Legends have 5 coaches? Why does CS only have 1 to 2 coaches sometimes? Like why do these games operate in these ways? So I've been doing a bit of work in the past week to kind of take on that a little bit, because I'm proposing to Fnatic like what our coaching staff should look like in the future. You know, hopefully infinite budget situation, I could just have as much as I want, but I know that there's going to be restrictions on certain things. So I do think that to a degree you're right, for sure. Like coaching structure and coaching staff is going to matter a lot. I think it's going to be very difficult to say. I just think it's difficult sometimes to look at a team and be like, yeah, that team won because of coaching structure.
Of course,
like no one knows behind the scenes exactly what people are doing. Like for all anyone knows, I could be doing nothing all day every day, and like, I'm a good coach or whatever, or I could be doing everything and we could be losing. Like for instance, like SLK. Like SLK is this random dude who's coaching like tier 2 like Valorant in Europe. Nobody fucking knows who he is, and he's like one of the smartest people I've ever talked to in Valorant. And, like really knows coaching, knows structure. Like he's just a good guy. So it's like I'd love to take all the glory when it's there. I'd love to pass off the blame when it's like, you know what I mean? So it's like difficult. Like I agree. I do think that coaching in esports in general could be elevated much higher than what it is. I do think in general Valorant coaching could be probably elevated. Like I'm not going to pretend I'm a perfect coach or anything. I definitely have things I need to improve on.
I'll tell you
So
this.
I'm like, I'm with you, and I'm like not with you. Like I'm with you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The reason
Yeah,
I
I
think
get
he's
you.
right is simply because if you're gonna, so if the structure is like what people assume it will be, if you have a week to prepare for someone, that's a lot more to get done. Like in NA, especially around my time, I mean, we'd have days, sometimes even hours to prepare for an entirely new game plan. Like, here's what most people don't know. So LCQ, we went to winners finals, right? And then the whole thing shut down and they made us go home and all that stuff, and then became an online tournament. You know, we revamped every single map again.
Yeah.
We changed our identity with a sub boy,
Mhm.
and then we swapped roles. We had Hiko and Boy switch to give a different look. We created a whole new system in 10 days. So, which didn't work out in our favor. Obviously, hindsight 2020, but given the fact that everyone could see our games and no one else played, we thought it was the best move. It definitely was not. I think it was way too much. But having a week to prepare allows you to do things like that. You can't do that with the old system, the 2021 system, because you don't have that much time to install, and you don't even have that much time to even think about anti-stratting or sort of like what second or third looks on these plays would look like. So you do like your fast A, and then you transition into a fake. But your next fast A should look different than the first fast A. What is the difference, right? Like you can't do that when you have like limited time. So I do think coaching staffs are going to be more valuable this season, and I absolutely think that in some ways they're going to be more responsible for wins than they were before, because we had less time to do all these other things that require like such drastic changes. So that's one. The second thing is your biggest argument for Fnatic is quite simply, and I've been yelling this since the game started, and me and Hiko have had too many arguments about this. This game is more Dota or League of Legends than it is Counter-Strike, period. It just is. I don't need to get into the FPS specific stuff. What I will say, though, is just simply this. Obviously, so what I mean by FPS specific stuff is everyone knows every character has different util.
Yeah.
In CS, everyone has the same util. So the things you can do are much different in CS because everyone has the same shit. Right? So obviously that's like one example of like the CS stuff. I'm just going to keep it simply on the abilities and the importance of the abilities, right? Look at it from this perspective. There's like 2,500 different permutations that can happen at the start of the round because of the 4 abilities that are presented at the start of the round. Because if a Viper walls a certain way, changes everything. If a smoke drops in a certain spot, changes all the variables, changes the math, right? So in general, when you think of timings, right? Like I don't know if you're familiar with the system that we've talked about in the past, the interval system of timing.
Like cool recon systems. Yeah.
Right. So we came up with that, like first strike, right?
Mhm.
Well, the reason was because we noticed, like your smoke timings in Dota, or God darn it, like your support transitioning to a different lane timings in League of Legends, there are certain times where things are more likely to happen. And there are certain ways that people are going to defend against this. And if you pay attention to how people do these things, you get a really good sense of like what's going to happen and how they're going to react in certain spots and situations, right? So when you think about like the highest level, like us versus Gambit, us versus Ascend, those were chess matches. Both defenses were dog shit. Why? Because it was just basically the attacks taking advantage of what everyone knew, the other was going to do, and then sort of making these like adjustments like in the middle of the game. And that stuff really only happens when you have like a coaching staff that, can sort of like dissect each other and craft, scenarios. Like Ethan for us against Gambit he never played that way before, and he never played that game since. Like the way he played against Gambit was specifically to attack Nats. Like specifically, if you go back and you look at those VODs, it was literally him against Nats, and he knew exactly what Nats was going to do, where he was going to be, and he was basically one-on-oneing Nats the entire time. You only can do that when you have time. Period.
Yeah, I think that that would be an interesting thing philosophically, I guess, because I think that like if you look at us and FPX, I think that like philosophically the way we approach preparation is clearly very different.
Very.
Like they always change comps. and we
Yep.
pretty much never change comps. I notice sometimes that there's micro details that they don't notice that we notice, and sometimes there might be macro stuff that both of us suck at or are good at. So I think going forward, like I guess that would be a big question if like a week is enough for people to switch comps and like actually think that that's valuable and stuff like that. Like I've always been a bit hesitant around stuff like that. I think sometimes people switch. It depends if you want to switch your comp or your game plan. Like some people just switch their comp and use the same, like pretty much the same game plan.
Right.
And then, you know what I mean? Or some people switch,
Right.
don't switch your comp, switch the game plan. Like, so like we've always favored like sticking with the comp and just making sure it's a dynamic enough idea that we can actually like change the game plan if necessary. And at the end of the day, like, I don't know, like game planning to a degree can work, but there's been times where we've had a dog shit game plan and we win 13-0. You know, we have a perfect game plan, it just doesn't work at all. And it's just like, it's like, I'm never going to say that like, that means that you shouldn't do it at all, because obviously we do it. And like I spend every night staying up till 6 a.m. making sure that it's done. But like, it's going to take some time to mature, I think. I don't know if next year is going to be the year where we see everything be perfect. Like I think we're a long way away from Valorant being like more solved on that respect. But it'll be a good development year, I think, for having a big coaching staff, I guess.
But I'm telling you, it's you have to get Fnatic to think about the fact that this game is more like a MOBA than it is a traditional FPS, because it just inherently is.
I'll think about that, but I've never considered that. I've always just, I think that like if you're talking about a deep-rooted philosophical strategy point of view, then potentially. If you're talking about timings of utility and stuff, potentially. But in terms of like movement, rotations and stuff, I feel like.
But but that changes like, because Neon breaks every single rotational pattern you can think of. She breaks every timing in the game. That's also Chamber's biggest argument. The reason why Chamber was broken was not the op. The op was cheating, but like you could deal with a better op. What made him broken was you can literally post him on one side of the map and he can hit one button in a dangerous situation and is immediately able to rotate and shave 9 seconds off a rotation and be able to support. So if you think Ascent, he could be in B main, hit a button, now he's back CT, now he's already tree room. Like what?
I know what you mean. I know what you mean, but I guess it's a weird way to, because I would just think about it like combined. Like I wouldn't think about it like this is League or maybe it's because I'm already thinking in that way.
Oh, no. Yeah. This game is basically like if CSGO and a MOBA had a baby, it's Valorant for sure. I'm just saying the reason for a bigger coaching staff is because at the highest level,
I see. Because
you have to treat it like a MOBA because you have to think about the timings and the abilities. Because 5 players, 4 abilities. You have to think about. Well, the reason why League has such a big coaching staff too is because there's a coach for money and optimization for buying patterns and timings. There's a coach that has to look at certain like rotational stuff. I know more Dota than League, but like smoke timings, where they place their wards, where do they normally counter ward first? Why do they want to counter ward here? What jungle pattern do they go to if they clear the jungle? You know what I'm saying? Like, so you need the different coaches to be able to look at that because it's unfair for one coach. Your job is to install a game plan that you obviously have done really well with Boaster, and you've already, you came up with that on your own, where you knew my job is to get with my IGL and we need to craft how we want to play every map, what the map rotations are, what the veto system is going to be, all that stuff, which is great. What you need help with is stats and analytics. You need help with the pattern recognition. This player likes to be in this spot. What happens when he doesn't, what happens if he gets smoked off? Your assistant needs to be able to tell you, like, this is normally what happens. That way you and Boaster can go, especially during like a timeout. It's just way easier if like you have like notes. Well, we can talk about this offline, but basically.
I know what you're saying. I think I'm more on the page than you would suspect. Like I think that most coaching staff in Valorant doesn't care about data that much. Like I feel like most coaching staff right now,
trust me. I know.
And like I've worked with Anders. Anders is this guy who literally like manually tracks everything possible and is just a genius when it comes to all that stuff. Like I feel like I said, like I've only been doing this for a certain amount of time, and I feel like data is one of those things where like I was open-minded about, like I understand that this is important. Like obviously this year has been kind of difficult to like I haven't had the time to track things in scrims. I haven't had the time to like do all the kind of nerdy stuff that someone who can do that stuff can do. Like it just takes too much of my time. So I do think that like that's an area in like both preparation, like strategy improvement, like individual just tracking. Like in this off season, I've paid analysts to give me feedback, like data wise, give me the
Smart.
data about a team. Like, you
stuff.
know what I mean? Like, tell me why our strategy sucks. Tell me why my players are good. Tell me why they're bad. Like, what's going on, kind of thing.
Yep.
I like just to inform, like even like roles and stuff. Like,
Right.
should Durka be on this role, or should Alpha be on that role? Like, even
And
just like little insights there. You know?
And that's League of Legends or Dota. That is not Counter-Strike. Because in Counter-Strike, the way you attack these problems is much different. So I'm telling you, it's much different. I don't know if you know much about my history, but I've made 8 majors in a row. So like, trust.
But why can't you use that same data in CS? Like, there's just as much. Well, there's more data in CS than Valorant right now, isn't there?
Right, but you use the data differently. I'll give you an example. So what we used to do with Markelov is we used to have a player called Markelov, and Markelov was all right. So Marek was one of the best oppers at 1.6, but you know what nobody realizes? He was also one of the best support players. Period. You know why? His flashbangs never hit teammates. So you know what we would do? We would find out, like when we played Luminosity or SK, Taco was one of the worst. So you know what we would do? We'd make his ass rotate so that he'd flash a teammate because he has a high statistical probability of flashing a teammate. We hit the fucking bomb site. Why do we hit that bomb site? Because their support player is not Marek. Their support player will make more mistakes. So what you do is, even your fake. So like normally how Blade would like assess what a fake is like, oh, if a molly isn't thrown here, it's a fake, right? So what we would do is we would show a fake, show a stunt, right? Make them rotate back. I'm thinking Mirage. Sorry, I should actually talk about the map before I do that. And then we'd like burst out apps. So it's like, yeah, we know it's a fake, but your guy just went and rotated. Now he has to go back because we know he's not disciplined. He's going to throw a flash like this. I know your guy, or, you know, at the time, obviously, that was one of their stronger maps. He's going to be, or the anchor is going to be here. So he can't be here or here because of this flash. So it's like you don't, or at least we don't, and I have never, I've never thought of Valorant like that because, again, Breach. Where's Breach? When he rotates back, Breach's flash is always going to be here. There is no variation because he's rotating and he has to do it quickly, and there's a high percentage that he flashes a spot. You always know where Breach flash is going to be and what areas are not covered. There's not going to be variance to that. Or Breach ult. You can't miss a Breach ult. I mean, maybe you can, but at our level, you can't miss a Breach ult, right? So it's like another thing is like Snacks. Snacks would play in a smoke and like Stewie pop flash out of a smoke and just do wild stuff. In this game, though we have KO, you know, it's not as successful. Like, it's not as easy to do that and play like that on KO as it would be in CS. So the way you manage and track your data has to be different because the abilities of the game make it such that it's almost easier to like assume what a retake is going to be. Like, no disrespect, I hate the fact that you guys play Killjoy on Ascent. I think it's troll. I know how to play against Killjoy because you're going to give me so much information on defense or on my attack. You're going to give me all the information I need because I basically, as long as my B main guys can tell me where the turret is, or as long as my A main guys can tell me where a turret is, I basically can figure out your formation based on prior matches and like structure. Ergo, I can figure out how you're going to rotate. Ergo, I know if we fake cat, what might happen. If we hit cat, what might happen, and like all the stuff in between. In CSGO, it's not like that at all.
I see what you're saying. I know what you mean. I think the difference in what you're saying is probably about more strategic level than rather dealing with like because obviously that the players we have or have picked up in the past haven't come from a Counter-Strike background. So a lot of my job is to kind of has been in the past in order to develop those players. A lot of it is like, you know, if it's more micro stuff, I'm thinking about Counter-Strike, not League of Legends. You know what I mean? Like if it's about
right,
how to clutch out and how to do that basic stuff or how to communicate, like all that stuff is Counter-Strike focused. Whereas I know what you're saying. Like this is a more kind of, my players would probably not need to hear this stuff. You know what I mean? There's less like backroom kind of coaching, strategic philosophy, kind of a bit more deeper. You know what I mean?
True. Yeah. But for me, it helped me early on in Valorant because I felt like it was an advantage having a MOBA background because
Mhm.
even like the utility timings I told you about, which was the interval system,
Mhm.
we were doing that because it's basically a smoke timing. Like
Yeah, I
you
think
know when
that's,
you're most likely to get hit because of how they use util and what time you're gonna get hit.
Yeah, and exactly that's what I'm saying. Like, I think there are some coaches that would probably hear what you're saying and say like, this guy's trying fucking shit. You know what I mean? Like, whereas like, I feel like I'm in a position where it's kind of nice that like I actually kind of agree with you. Like, you know what I mean? Like it.
Yeah, right.
It
Yeah,
sounds
100%.
like I think if most coaches said that, I'd be like, this guy's talking crap. Like it's Counter-Strike, it's not League of Legends. You know what I mean? So
Right, but most coaches
think
don't have
that,
to deal with your team. That's the problem, right? For me, it's Gambit, Ascent, right? Like that's the thing is like when
Mhm.
you're at the top playing against the top guys, it's an entirely new game. And I feel like it's so hard to explain this to people that what you can do in rank. This is why I really try to tell NA players that are streaming, I won't name any names, that they need to stop like getting angry all the time in their rank games and just play the game knowing you're at a disadvantage because you don't really get that many reps at a disadvantage when you're playing on top teams.
Right.
And then in tournament, when you have to play against Fnatic and you're down, 4-0 on Icebox like DRX, well, how are you going to come back? How are you going to play the rest of that map, right? Like they had to call a timeout, they win a couple rounds, and then you like win out, right? But like they don't get that experience. Why? Because when they're training or when they're playing in rank, they're complaining all the time about, oh, this guy's random or this guy does dumb shit. It's like, yeah, so you're playing at a disadvantage. Good luck. Train yourself. Learn how to fight through a problem.
What we do is we've just booked practice against Turkish teams, and then that's the way that we.
Those guys are so aggro, but that's also like old SOAR. You know how I mentioned SOAR, like XOR, like with Xander and Cryo, and like those teams. The reason they would beat teams in tournaments is because that level of aggression and FU we don't see when you're playing against top level guys. You don't know how to handle it.
Right.
Only Paper Rex, I think, is the team that would.
So
Yeah.
I have to be that guy. I have to be that guy. You know, we're running out of time. You know, the problem is that if I could book a slot with you, Mini, and Frost, hey, I would do it. But unfortunately, we have time restrictions. So that's part of the game. Thank you very much for coming by.
Mini.
It was really nice talking to you. I hope you have another wonderful week. I hope you have a few great weeks where you can relax.
Thank you.
Bit.
What's the score in Game Changers? I was watching Game Changers.
6-1 G2 right now on Pearl.
Third
Map
map or
3.
second map?
They're
Map
playing
3.
Yoru on Pearl.
Oh,
Actually,
okay.
so
Yeah, I'm very surprised about this result. That's crazy, but that's good though. That's actually great for Game Changers.
it is. It very much is. But you know what? We can all watch it in peace a little later. So till then, obviously we get Sliggy. Who could have guessed? But either way, thank you very much for coming by, Mini. Just enjoy your time, and I'm looking forward to what you got ready for us in Japan.
Thank you. See you guys later.